Soul Blazer, developed by Quintet and released for the Super Nintendo in 1992, is a game about the faults of man, the consequences of greed, the worth of a life, but most importantly, however, it's about how to slap the bass. As the story goes, wise men tell the tale of a great king destroyed by temptation. King Magrid ruled the frail empire, and although most people thought of him as fair and kind, there were some who thought he was consumed by greed. One night, the king overheard two guards talking about a great inventor by the name of Leo. The king then pondered how he could use Leo's inventions to make him even more wealthy. Dr. Leo was forced to come to the castle in order to invent a machine that would summon the king of all evil, Death Toll. Once the machine was completed, Death Toll was summoned, and the king traded every living being in the world for a single gold piece each, and soon the world was empty. Only two people remained and watched from high above, you and the Master. The Master tasked you with reviving the world, and on a ray of light you descended to the earth, a warrior sent to restore the living and punish evil, a Soul Blazer. You play as a disciple of the Master, who is essentially God, but this is an early 90s Nintendo game, so don't you dare say the G word, you heathen. The Master tells you that because you will be able to communicate with all living things, you should have a name that you are free to choose yourself. I went with MK because, well, I'm MK. Going through the only available path, I open a treasure chest containing a sword and dispatch the enemies to reveal an old man. He is a being from the sky and tells me that Death Toll has captured all creatures and sealed them away in monster lairs, and I need to release them all, just as I did for him. He joins me as a sphere of light that circles around my character, allowing me to cast magical spells. It's also here that I learned that the start button on my Super Nintendo controller is starting to go, and I'm eventually going to need to get a new one. I can only jam my thumbnail so far into the controller in order to bring up the menus reliably. Soul Blazer is an action RPG that is more action than RPG because while you do level up and stuff, it's only really tied to increasing your health and meeting certain requirements for equipment. You attack in an arc in front of you, but it's typically best to have enemies on your right hand side as they tend to take a bit more damage and stun than a frontal swing. You can hold R and L to stick your sword out in front of you, which will quickly chip away at an enemy's health, as well as draw gems towards you. Gems are a form of consumable used to cast spells, and should you happen to die, that gem counter will reset to 0 unless you use a strange bottle. Spells can be swapped out and have many different uses, but can only be shot in the direction the character is facing. The orb that circles the character needs to be lined up properly in order to make good use of said spells, and one neat thing is that if you run up against a wall, you can extend the range in which the sphere orbits. This can be handy in a few situations for taking out some troublesome enemies, but sadly most of the spells are situational at best, and you'll probably only be using a handful of the ones available. With the basics down pat, we head to the first area called Grass Valley. There isn't much to see here as the entire place is deserted. All that remains is the entrance to the dungeon, so I head inside. Clearing monster lairs is the name of the game. These little spawners will constantly spew out enemies until you defeated them all. Once everything is killed, it becomes a little green button thingy that can have all sorts of effects, from opening a door to changing the layout of the dungeon or even reviving someone in the town. Many things can be revived, ranging from plants to people, goats to steeples, mushrooms, doors, and chests of drawers. It all contains a little bit of lore. As you make your way through the dungeon, you'll find yourself returning to the town to check in with the things you've released. These can unlock various items as well as conversations and serve as a form of progression gating. Usually what happens is that you'll come to an area where you can't progress until you either do something, get an item, or initiate a conversation. Thankfully, most of the dungeons are designed in a way that make for an easy return to town, whether it be looping back on itself, giving you a teleport square, or these big diamonds containing a spirit that will give you stuff like experience points as well as offer to bring you back to town. The first major hurdle I run into is this elevator that is no longer working. Most important objects are able to communicate with you because they still contain the spirit of the object they were created from. For example, this elevator tells you that it was invented by Dr. Leo and cannot move unless the watermill is turning, giving you a hint that you need to return to town and get the mill that you just recently unlocked functioning again. Making my way back to Grass Valley, I check in with the villagers I've unlocked so far. Inside the chief's house, there is a lady who must be a fan favorite because she tells me that she is lonely and asks me to call her mommy. A man guards the world's shortest bridge. I tell him that it's not the size of the bridge, but how you use it, and he lets me past. This guy here can't seem to turn the wheel to start the watermill, so I flex on him and do it without breaking a sweat. Back in the dungeon, I cross the elevator to a new area and clean up the rest of the monster layers. The two most important things I unlock are the dream rod and this girl who appears to be sleeping. Putting two and two together, I touch the rod to her head and enter her dream. She cries out for her father, and after stepping on the monster layer, a voice filled with sadness tells her to reveal everything she knows to the person in front of her and provide them with his paintbrush. Waking up from the dream, she finds me, a stranger, in her home and has a completely rational response. She stops me, however, recognizing me from her dream and says that she will tell me all she knows if I can find the paintbrush. Returning to the dungeon, I recognize this area from the girl's dream, and having opened up the wall, I can now retrieve the brush. Returning to the girl, I learn that her name is Lisa and she is the daughter of Dr. Leo. He left her a note stating that if she ever needs help to seek the village chief and the various pets her father used to keep, she confides in me to find her father, and I set out to do just that. First, however, I need to do a little bit of exploring. There's a lot of funny little interactions in the town, so it's worth it to talk to everyone. This kid tries to sell me goat food for $1 billion plus tax until his mother yells at him and gives it to me for free. I take the food to this goat who claims he's a connoisseur, and after eating it, you can follow him to the tool shop where he is demanding more food from the owner. Currency doesn't exist in this world, so shops will supply you with an infinite amount of healing herbs. However, you can only hold one at a time. Other items are typically just given to you, traded for, or found in the environment. This dude shows me how to walk like a crab, so of course I get down dirty. Anyway, a man I released earlier is screaming about a ghost in his house, and on a closer inspection it seems that the painting on the wall bears the image of the village chief, and he appears to be quite sad. Based on the information provided to me by a talking goat. Trust me, I'm on a mission from God. I touch Leo's paintbrush to the painting and get sucked inside. Some of the monsters in here can't be defeated just yet. A spirit from a crystal told me earlier that I would need a special sword in order to do so. I kill what I can and make my way to the boss. Bosses in this game will put you in your place if you don't tread carefully. They're not terribly difficult, but they hit like trucks, so after making several stupid mistakes, I reel back in my patience a bit and chip this boss down slowly while sitting on 2 health. Nice. The unlocked monster lair reveals the village chief. He asks me to come back to his house and hooks me up with a brown stone. After doing so, the master's voice booms down stating that the stone is the key to open the world of evil where death toll is waiting. There's 6 stones in all, and I'll need to travel the world and gather them if I hope to restore the land to its former glory. Next stop, Greenwood. If a tree falls in the forest of Greenwood, and all the residents are sealed away by evil, does it make a sound? Greenwood was a place that was developed by Turbo the dog, a pet of Dr. Leo's. Turbo wanted to create a town so that animals could come here and feel safe, but died while fighting death toll. A grave was erected in his honor, but we'll get to that later. Entering the dank swamp to search for monster lairs, I find the true dankness. This baseline. It's not long before I find the first of 3 pyramid-like structures and spend some time releasing the inhabitants of the forest. Eventually, I hit a bit of a roadblock, or water block in this case. These rafts will only give rides to the people from Greenwood Forest, so I'm going to need to prove myself. I head back to talk to the animals, and after acquiring some items and doing a little bit of grave robbing, I procure some leaves that prove that I'm a friend of the forest. The rafts give me a lift and it's on to the final pyramid. If the first pyramid was water, the second was fire. This one is, of course, can't see shit. You require the use of a mole that you find back in Greenwood that states adorably, "You cheer everyone up. Let's work together to revive the world." Making my way through the darkness, I come out at a boss, or rather bosses. There's 3 lion head looking things that each represent an element. They're pretty easy to dispatch with the shield bracelet equipped because they didn't account for my secret technique, standing still. With the Wood Guardian released, it grants me the greenstone, and it's on to the next area. Everyone who's everyone knows that it's always better down where it's wetter, under the sea. So I hit up the mermaid statue that informs me that no human can live under the water, and I should seek the bubble armor. I beat up the local wildlife for a bit before releasing a mermaid that can provide me with the armor I'm looking for. Wearing the armor forms a bubble around me, allowing safe passage on the ocean floor, which opens up the rest of the area. This more or less just equates to unlocking the other mermaid statues so that they can release the barriers blocking my progression. There's this thunder ring that I gain shortly into the area that allows me to call down lightning from the sky, so long as I'm standing next to these special blocks. This allows me to kill otherwise impenetrable enemies. That's neat and all, but I'm pretty sure this is the only fucking time in the game where this is used, and the ring is quickly returned to my inventory to collect dust. Outside of using some teardrops to freeze some magma and this one fish that apparently has a 1,000-foot vertical leap, not really much happens as I unlock new areas. The spirit that helps me in this area is only good for the volcano as it stops the fire from raining down on you. I want you to take a good hard look at this area right here. Notice the easily accessible right-hand path that I'm not taking. It contains a power bracelet that would increase my attack power significantly, but my dumbass forgot to go that way, so I'll just have to suffer for the rest of the game. I make it to the boss, which requires a short traversal over a sunken ship. He tries to give me the boniest handjob ever and succeeds in making my soul leave my body, as much like in real life, I just laid back and took it like a fucking idiot. Knowing my determination, I wasn't about to let him jerk me around, and the second time I skull fucked him. The queen hooks me up with a blue stone, and it's time to do a little mountain climbing. The home of the mountain spirit is a surprisingly straightforward area. After a little while, you eventually come to an icy area where traction is a problem, and it forces you to return to the village to find an alternative. Might as well slap some mushrooms on my feet that are covered in snail goo. That should do the trick. I make my way back to the icy part, and you can kill the snowballs? I think I've spent my whole life thinking that you need them to hit a rock or a wall, and here I find out completely by accident that you can kill them. My mind is fucking blown. Anyway, I head back to the ice and stop the slippy slide with a little shticky schlop and continue on like normal. The 4-way magic has been pulling its weight for a while and continues to be one of the best spells in the game in my opinion. I don't even really need to use anything else, but I do so anyway, just to switch things up a bit. The creatures on this mountain are born, become old, and die, all within a short time. The game touches briefly on living each moment to the fullest as the creatures feel fulfilled with their lives, despite only living for around a year. It makes me really think about how I would spend my life, and the only answer is snail racing. The final area here has invisible bridges to find, as well as a few annoying enemies, but the home stretch leads to the boss, a merman. I can't help but feel this should have been the boss of the previous area. Either way, he hits pretty hard but isn't too challenging if you've got the power bracelet. Which I don't, so I use the shield bracelet and swap to medicinal herbs when my health gets low. Crazy how this fish has better abs than I do. The king feels bad about treating Gnome the snail poorly and lets him out of prison. Gnome, being one of Dr. Leo's pets, hooks me up with the next stone. The servants to the king do mention something very important for later. They speak of the legendary phoenix, but can only call upon it if you collect the master's 3 symbols, those being the red-hot stick, ball, and mirror. We'll get back to that in a little bit. For now though, it's off to Dr. Leo's lab. Upon arriving, I'm given some very valuable information from a door. No, I'm not kidding. It tells me that there are machines lurking around which can only be defeated by the Zentetsu sword, and I should find it as soon as possible. So I head to the basement and oh baby, what a fucking jam. So this is unrelated to the game, but when I was a kid I had a cassette player with a built-in microphone, so I would regularly get blank tapes from my sister and record video game music from the TV speaker. I cannot understate the excitement that came from hearing video game music on the go, in a time where I had 3 channels and an imagination. This was one of the most memorable songs to me, and I played this shit on repeat. Nowadays you can just look it up on YouTube, but damn what a fucking banger. Anyway, I make my way through the basement, killing what I can, and eventually get the Zentetsu sword. It's murdering time. As you may recall from the earlier areas of the game, there were enemies that I couldn't defeat, but with this sword in hand, I can finally go back and do a little cleanup. Mostly. There's still a few that we can't kill, but that will come later. I hesitate on the backtracking though, as I am a creature of a short attention span, and I try to focus on the task at hand, which is, saving cats mostly. One of the cats is dreaming of when Dr. Leo was captured and gives us some insight to the events leading up to the depopulating of the world. Dr. Leo believes that the king has no sense of value of the lives he's putting at stake, and talks about how every life, no matter how small, has meaning. The guards of course follow orders blindly and apprehend Leo, bringing him to the castle. I unlock a model city, and using the paintbrush I am once again sucked inside. I kinda love this section. There's nothing special about it from a gameplay standpoint aside from the invisible enemies which you need a door spirit to see. Again, I'm not joking. What I love, however, is that you're essentially a giant which is terrorizing these tiny soldiers, and you get to live out your power fantasy of being a kaiju monster. 2 model cities later and 1 batch of catnip to move some cats, I get all the stuff I need to head into the final section. Why yes, this chest of drawers is jumping up and down for exercise. I come across the boss of the area, which is some sort of robot with a clock for a crotch. He'll teleport all over the place and shoot some rockets, but as long as you stay on the move, he's not too bad and goes down fairly easily. Maria the doll hooks me up with a purple stone, and it's on to Magritte Castle where the king resides. First, however, I'm going to do a slight bit of backtracking now that I have the Zantetsu sword. I hit up the World of Evil painting back in Grass Valley to kill these squid-looking things and get probably the most useless spell in the game, Tornado. It's strong, don't get me wrong, but it's impossible to hit anything with it reliably. The main reason I'm backtracking right now is because I want to get as many of the emblems as I can. The emblems are some pretty well hidden items that in most cases are completely invisible. Collecting all of them allows you to cash them in at a crystal that is knocked down from a tree by a deer in Greenwood. Don't ask questions. The magic bell you get is a handy little item that lets you cast magic for free. I can't get all of the emblems just yet, so I hit up a few more areas and it's back to Magritte. I enter the Tickle Dungeon. This guy didn't make it. I nab a few things that will become important later, like the harp string and the spirit sword. This allows me to attack ghost enemies and finally lets me hit those weird orb things back in Greenwood for the final bit of backtracking. You may have noticed I haven't talked much about the combat up until this point. Look, there's only so many ways I can say, and then I stood still and mashed B until both of us get bored. That being said, I stood still and mashed B a lot, as well as grabbed some hidden treasure. I just kinda have most of this game appended to memory at this point. Fun fact, this was the first game I ever used a Nintendo Power for. Not sure if that particular issue is still kicking around on my bookshelf, but it was this one. Eventually I find a sleeping guard and invade his dreams like a good version of Freddy Krueger. There I see Dr. Leo talking about being praised as a scientist for his inventions, but came to invent a machine to call upon evil. Why would you do that? Seriously. Anyway, he waxes poetic about how machines are there to make people's lives easier, but should people come to depend on machines, they will become unhappy. I head over to the bar and hand the harp string to a bard who talks about a girl who took care of him in Grass Valley. Fixed harp in hand, he belts out this banger. I then grab the platinum card that was hiding under a guard's foot and use it to gain entrance to the western tower. I also kinda like how the guards are talking about the king in high regard, but then whisper to you that they'll be punished if they don't say that. I climb the tower and unlock the spirit that can let me see hidden walls, which is only useful for this area. Eventually I unlock the queen, who slips something into my pocket and grazes my sky meat with a wink. She hooks me up with a VIP card to get into the eastern tower, so I climb that one too, and I finally get to meet up with Dr. Leo. He tells me that the stones I've collected are the keys to opening the gate to the world of evil, and that King Magritte has the final stone. Just as we're about to leave, the soldiers protecting Leo get speared as we face the queen and her men. She's holding Lisa hostage to get Leo to cooperate with them. Leo agrees to help them if they'll let Lisa go. The queen releases her, and Leo whispers in my ear from 10 feet away to stay behind him. I move up and he hands me the airship key and grazes my sky meat with a wink and asks me to take care of Lisa before blowing himself up along with the queen and her men. Leo has a zoomer moment and tells me that he believes he was born in the wrong generation. He says that scientists are supposed to make people happy, but the wrong scientist at the wrong time can cause sadness for all. He says that happiness comes from being patient and speaks softly to his daughter with his final breath and tells her to take her time. She'll get there gradually. Lisa continues to cry, and I piece the fuck out of there because I know where a hidden item is. If you check where the queen was standing when she gave you the VIP card, you can get the super bracelet, which is essentially the attack and defense bracelets combined into one. It's handy, but I'm only going to get to use it for about 10 minutes before its usefulness wears off. I hop on the flying machine and it's time to fight probably the most annoying boss in the game. I don't really know of a good way to do this, so I just kinda stand midway up the ship fighting the breeze, dodging fire and taking pot shots when I can. If you get a good rhythm going, he isn't too hard, but it's a lot of waiting around to see whether or not he's going to dive bomb you or not. After the fight, we release the king and Lisa meets us as we disembark from the airship. She thanks me for staying with her and is happy that I was able to reunite them. She asks me if I'm a real human being, and I hit her with the truth that no, I am a meat popsicle. She expresses that even though I'm right in front of her, she feels like I'm so far away and then hits me with an I love you. Damn girl, you can't just call it my dissociative disorder and then manipulate my feelings. Red flags all round. Anyway, I talked to the king and he talked about how he was on top of the world, but once you reach the top, the only way is down, and he summoned Death Toll as a means to impress the queen. The lengths some men will go to get some pussy, am I right? He hands me the final stone, and I open up the path in the Aurora to finally enter the world of evil. Death Toll, however, can't be approached until I summon the Phoenix. I already have 2 of the 3 red-hot items from my backtracking endeavors, so I dive headfirst into the final area of the game to look for the 3rd. This song is fucking burned into my brain. The world of evil houses the best grinding spot in the game, and I've spent many an hour here, but for now I have to get all the endgame items to find the path to Death Toll. So I grab the soul armor and also the red hot ball and make my way back to the mountain to finally summon the Phoenix and unlock the final boss. Combined with the magic bell I got earlier, I can now shoot projectiles out of my sword infinitely, or at least I could if I was actually a high enough level to use the soul sword, which is required for casting the spell. Thankfully, I only need to kill a few more enemies to level, and it's on to the final section. Nothing but silence as I enter the palace. A cloaked figure tells me he will put me in a deep sleep. Finally! Insomnia has been kicking my ass for years. I do what I do best and stand still while mashing B, and he goes down in seconds. Death Toll isn't done yet though, and he starts the final encounter. You need to destroy these little blue flames in order to open up the jewel on his head while dodging the lasers that come out of his dual scepters and the 3-way blaster he shoots out of his mouth. The hardest part of this fight is the lag management. It looks cool as all hell, but damn, the game is struggling to keep up. After what feels like an eternity, he goes down, and a small voice tells me that the world of evil exists in the back of people's minds, and as long as there are inventions in this world, the same thing will happen again. I knew putting milk in a soda stream was a bad idea. As the world of evil begins to disappear, the ending plays. My character goes around talking to the various important figures of the world where they congratulate me on saving everyone. Like good sleep comes after hard work, good rest comes after an honest life. One last invasion of Lisa's dreams, and she tells me that in time she will feel less lonely and asks a favor of me. She wants me to return to her someday and knows that I could lie to her, but feels that the promise will give her hope for the future. I agree, but as she wakes, I've already left for the store to go get some smokes. We see a beautiful shot of a sunset in the distance, and a text scroll describes how no one noticed me leave on a beam of light. Typical. What's kind of neat is that this close-up of Lisa is slightly different in the Japanese version, and she appears a bit more anime looking. And with that, the credits roll and the Bard's song plays. After the credits, there's a scene of Lisa spending time with her pet, who is implied to be the reincarnation of Turbo. I'm returned to Earth once more, but being stripped of my memory, Lisa asks me if I know who she is. The choice changes the dialogue slightly, but she ultimately accepts that I have no recollection of her, and she attempts to restart our friendship and shows me around. The end. Soul Blazer has a lot of heart. While not being an overly difficult game, it easily bridges the gap between novice and expert, which in turn creates a game for everyone. The narrative is told simply, but has a deeply touching story about life and death and making the most of every moment. While the gameplay is simplistic and maybe even a bit boring, it's engaging enough to make you want to see what's next and rewards you for clever positioning and use of the mechanics at play. The soundtrack is upbeat but also very somber at times, which makes the story themes hit even harder in my opinion. I feel as though being an early SNES release may have hurt the instrumentation at times, and some of the songs can get a little repetitive and droning. I love Soul Blazer and go back to it regularly because it's short and to the point and makes for a fun experience that you can easily finish in an evening if you're dedicated. If you can get by the fact that it's a bit bare bones and minimalistic, you'll find a decent little game that may even invoke a bit of self-reflection. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Here's a little something extra as thanks for sticking around. Have you ever seen someone grind to the max level and take on Death Toll? This took me hours to do, like literally days of off and on sessions going through this teleporter and killing the flipping squares over and over again while watching YouTube. I actually even managed to crash the game at one point by going back and forth through the teleporters too quickly and lost a bunch of progress. Anyway, once you max out your level at 50, the only thing left to do is fight Death Toll again, but this time he stands no fucking chance. My health bar doesn't even deplete in the slightest, it only changes color, with full health being represented in white. I don't think I'm doing much more damage to him, if at all, but with the health pool this large, I can more or less just stand still and mash B, just as God intended. Soul Blazer is awesome, go check it out, just don't grind to max level. Now don't forget to slap that subscribe button like Soul Blazer slaps the bass.